The sound of a hand slapping flesh cracked across the small-town diner like a gunshot. Forks froze midair. Coffee cups trembled in old hands. Conversations halted mid-laugh. "Shut up, old man," the young bully sneered, towering over the frail, silver-haired veteran slouched in his booth. The old veteran's cheek burned red from the strike, but his eyes, calm, steady, weathered by war and pain, did not blink. He simply whispered, "Son, you don't know what you're doing." The bully laughed. He didn't know the truth. He didn't know that the quiet, beaten man he had just humiliated wasn't just a forgotten war hero. He didn't know that outside these diner walls, power ran in bloodlines. Because the old man's daughter, his only child, was the head of Homeland Security. And she was on her way home. Scene 1, the diner. It was a chilly autumn morning in a town where everyone knew everyone. The diner smelled of bacon grease, maple syrup, and nostalgia. Its cracked vinyl booths and creaky stools had seen decades of gossip, first dates, and old men arguing over baseball scores. In the far corner, Arthur Hale, a decorated Vietnam veteran, sat quietly with a plate of scrambled eggs. His once broad shoulders were hunched, his army jacket worn and frayed. Age had taken his strength, but not his dignity. He was a man of few words, content to sip coffee and watch the world go by. Arthur wasn't just any old man. He had medals tucked away in a box under his bed, medals he never showed off. He carried scars on his body and heavier ones in his heart. He had buried friends on foreign soil, come home to protests and jeers, and built a quiet life for himself in this small town. But not everyone respected him. At the counter sat Kyle Dawson, 28, tall, muscular, and arrogant. He was the kind of man who mistook loudness for strength. Always boasting, always showing off, always needing someone smaller to push around to feel big. And this morning, his target was Arthur. "You old fossil," Kyle barked across the diner, "why don't you shut up about your war stories? Nobody cares what you did 50 years ago. This is the real world now." Arthur hadn't even been talking. He'd simply been humming softly to himself, an old military tune he couldn't shake. But Kyle, fueled by cheap beer from the night before and his need for attention, decided that was enough. "Leave him be, Kyle," the waitress, Maggie, said firmly. She was in her 50s, kind, but worn thin from years of dealing with loudmouths. Kyle smirked. "What? He's not your dad, is he? Old man should be in a nursing home, not taking up space here." Arthur looked up slowly, his pale blue eyes meeting Kyle's with quiet steel. "Son," he said softly, "I've heard worse from enemies I faced in battle. I'll forgive your words. Just don't raise your hand." That should have ended it. But Kyle leaned closer, his voice venomous. "What are you gonna do if I do? Huh, Grandpa? Tell your war buddies?" The diner went silent. Arthur didn't respond. He just lowered his gaze, choosing peace over conflict. And that silence, that restraint, infuriated Kyle. With a sudden burst of rage, he slapped Arthur across the face. Scene 2, the daughter. 2 states away, Rachel Hale was sitting in her sleek black SUV, staring at the family photo she kept in her visor. Her father's face smiled back at her, younger, proud, holding her when she was just a girl. Now Rachel was 42, sharp, composed, with eyes that could cut steel. She had climbed through the ranks of law enforcement, her reputation forged in fire. And now, she was the director of Homeland Security. She had faced terrorists, cartels, cyber threats, and everything in between. But when she saw her father's picture, she wasn't Director Hale. She was just his daughter, the girl who had grown up listening to his bedtime stories, not about fairy tales, but about courage, sacrifice, and honor. She hadn't seen him in 3 months. Work had kept her away. Today was supposed to be special, her chance to surprise him at their favorite diner. As she drove into town, she had no idea what was happening inside those walls. Scene 3, after the slap. Arthur's cheek stung, but he did not raise his hand. He simply placed his fork down carefully and took a slow sip of coffee. His calmness infuriated Kyle even more. Pathetic, Kyle spat. You don't even fight back. Guess the army makes cowards now. Enough. Maggie snapped, her hands shaking as she dialed the phone behind the counter. I'm calling the sheriff. But Kyle grabbed her wrist before she could. Don't. You think anyone's gonna arrest me for shutting up some old coot? People in the diner shifted uncomfortably. They wanted to intervene, but Kyle was young, strong, and unpredictable. Fear silenced them. Arthur finally spoke, his voice soft but steady. You think this makes you a man? Hitting someone who can't fight back? Kyle leaned in. It makes me the only man in this room. And that was the moment the bell over the door jingled. Rachel walked in. Scene 4, the confrontation. Rachel froze in the doorway. Her eyes locked onto her father's reddened cheek, the bully towering over him. For a split second, the powerful director disappeared, and the little girl inside her screamed. Dad? Her voice trembled. Arthur looked up, surprised, his eyes softening. Rachel. Kyle smirked. Who's this? Another old-timer coming to defend you? Rachel stepped forward, her jaw tight, her posture radiating authority. I'm his daughter. Kyle laughed. Oh yeah? What are you gonna do, sweetheart? Slap me back? Rachel didn't flinch. She pulled out her badge, flashing it before his eyes. The diner gasped. Homeland Security, she said coldly. And you just assaulted a decorated veteran. My father. Kyle's smirk faltered, but only slightly. So what? He's just some old guy. You're not gonna ruin my life over this. Rachel's voice dropped to a dangerous calm. Son, you already ruined your life the second you laid a hand on him. Scene 5, the shift. The sheriff arrived minutes later, summoned by Maggie's call. By then, Kyle was pale, sweating, realizing too late who he had tangled with. Rachel stood beside her father, one hand resting gently on his shoulder. For the first time in years, Arthur felt small, not because of weakness, but because his daughter was now the protector. The sheriff cuffed Kyle, who shouted weak protests. It was just a slap. He's fine. He's not even hurt. Rachel stepped close, her eyes burning into him. That old man has faced things you can't even imagine. He's buried friends who fought so you could have the freedom to run your mouth in a diner. You don't get to touch him. Not now. Not ever. The diner erupted in applause, quiet at first, then louder, as decades of respect for Arthur surged back into the open. People stood, some even saluted him. For once, Arthur wasn't invisible. He closed his eyes, tears welling, and whispered to Rachel, "You didn't have to come all this way." Rachel squeezed his hand. "Dad, I'll always come." Scene 6, resolution. Kyle was taken away, charged with assault. The town buzzed with talk of the incident for weeks, most people ashamed they hadn't spoken up sooner. But something shifted that day. People began treating Arthur differently, not with pity, but with the honor he deserved. And for Arthur, the real victory wasn't justice. It was watching his daughter stand tall, realizing that all the lessons he had tried to teach her had taken root. That night, as father and daughter sat together on the porch, Arthur finally broke the silence. "You know, Rachel," he said softly, "I fought to protect this country. But seeing you, seeing what you've become, it feels like maybe I did something right after all." Rachel rested her head on his shoulder. "You did everything right, Dad. And no matter how busy I get, you'll never be alone." The night was quiet. No bullies, no fear, just a father and daughter, two warriors